this world is, with fiat currency is really driving off of a cliff. And so now it ties into what I want to achieve here in Vancouver for not just our four boys, but everyone else who lives here.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Coin Stories podcast. I'm Natalie Brunel, and here with me is Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim. He's got a big announcement that I'm super excited to share. So Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Some people might have heard this already. Some headlines came out that Vancouver might soon be a Bitcoin city, that you guys are actually considering adding it as a strategic reserve. So before we get to that news, let's learn a little bit more about you, a little bit about, your experience as mayor. I know you were elected in 2022, but let's take us back and give us a little of your origin story.
Wow, how far do you want to go back?
Far back as you want.
Okay, well, long story. Actually, this might be kind of relevant. Going back to the fact that I'm actually the son of immigrants, and like most immigrants, we didn't have a lot of money. Now, that's not a boo-hoo story. It's just a frame of reference. But we really struggled with housing attainability. I went to 5 elementary schools in 7 years because we couldn't afford rent. There were 5 kids in my family, and we lived off of basically a secretary's salary. So that sort of sets the foundation. But things got better, you know what? And we worked really hard, like the whole family did. I went to business school out in Vancouver, became a chartered accountant, became an investment banker. So I worked in Vancouver, Toronto, London, England, and back in Vancouver on the mining side, which is kind of ironic when you think of Bitcoin mining now. Then I went into private equity in the e-commerce space, when we used to call it e-commerce back in 2000, 2001. And then quit that and became an entrepreneur. Fast forward a whole bunch of years. The company we have, just to give you context, we now have about just under 500 locations. We're a home healthcare company, about 500 locations across 4 continents, about 15,000 team members. But we're really a technology platform. So we understand business, we understand how technology works. And about 6 years ago, my boys didn't see. We have 4 kids. They didn't see a future for themselves in Vancouver, and so I decided to run for mayor. I wasn't successful the first time, but 2 years ago I became the 41st mayor of Vancouver.
Wow. Okay. So you're not a career politician. You're a businessman turned
Yeah,
politician. Can you share
you
a
know
little bit
what?
more about that?
I want to be very respectful because I think anyone who runs for elected office, regardless of their political beliefs, I do have a lot of time and respect for someone who's willing to do it. Um, and I say this respectfully, but I do not want to be a politician. I have no aspirations to be a premier or a prime minister. I would actually, I would die inside if that happened, even if you paid me $1 trillion. And we know fiat's going to zero anyways, but even if you gave me like 10 Bitcoin or 1,000 Bitcoin, I still wouldn't do it because it's not my passion, it's not my purpose. The reason I ran once again is because our 4 boys didn't see a future for themselves in Vancouver, and so it's an honor and a privilege to step up to this role to try to make this place better. And it's kind of a nice segue because I went down. I got orange pilled about 5 years ago by Jeff Booth, and I know Jeff's actually a really good buddy. We've known each other for a couple of decades, and I was involved with Build Direct, which was his previous company, and so I trust Jeff with my life. And I know he hates it when I say he orange pilled me, but I guess it really, through reading his book and having a lot of chats with him, it really opened my eyes up to the benefits of Bitcoin and how this this world is, with fiat currency is really driving off of a cliff. And so now it ties into what I want to achieve here in Vancouver for not just our 4 boys, but everyone else who lives here. When you see what's happening, and we're dealing with an affordability crisis, and you realize that it's actually, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of things to fix up the city, but the big underlying challenge is people can't afford to live here because our currency is getting debased. We have to say something, and we have to. I know, and it takes. We're taking a big political risk here because, as Jeff mentions, you really should meet people where they're at, and unfortunately, a lot of people aren't at the place where you can have this conversation where you're not going to take a lot of shots. And so we're going to do it anyways, because like I said, I'm not a politician, and what's at stake is the future of the city that I love and all the people that are here. So it's worth taking that risk.
Coin Stories is proudly brought to you by Bitdeer, a global leader in disruptive technology for Bitcoin mining and AI. As a publicly traded leader, Bitdeer boasts a massive 2.5 gigawatts of electrical capacity and infrastructure under development across 3 continents, positioning Bitdeer as one of the most diversified and power-dense computing companies in the world. Bitdeer's leadership pioneered the original advancements in Bitcoin mining ASICs and is now poised to disrupt the market again with groundbreaking new designs for the next generation of mining ASICs that are targeted to reach efficiencies of as low as 5 joules per terahash by late next year. Now they're leveraging years of expertise in data center and cloud management into high-performance computing through a partnership with NVIDIA. Join Bitdeer in reshaping the world of Bitcoin mining. Learn more at bitdeer.com and explore how they are pioneering the future today. That's amazing. Yeah, you hear very few politicians say something like fiat is going to zero. So clearly you are orange-pilled. Excited to hear that it was by someone so revered in our community, Jeff Booth, who I'm grateful to call a friend. His book, Price of Tomorrow, hope everyone gets it. So tell me a little bit more, because when people go down this journey, and some people who are watching or listening to this, they might be just starting out, or they're not fully convinced that Bitcoin is the fix to most of our problems. Can you talk about what got you there? We have very similar backgrounds, immigrants, recognizing that the affordability crisis is pretty much permeating so many different cities and nation states. So what got you from, okay, there's a problem, Bitcoin is the solution?
I didn't start off with Bitcoin. What I did was my eyes were open. So I wanted to understand Bitcoin, but I wanted to understand money, and I wanted to understand everything around it. And so and maybe what I'll do is I'll actually I have a funny story about my kid, because my kid actually got on this before I did. And so he came up to me, I think it was like November of 2018, and he said, "Dad, I want to buy Bitcoin." And I'm the smart guy. I'm the entrepreneur, the chartered accountant, former investment banker. I worked in private equity, and I got to qualify this statement, because I know some politicians will clip this, and I'll have to live with this for a while. But I didn't do this, what I'm going to say next, but I did say this to him. I said, "You touch that shit, and I'm going to punch you in the throat." And so that was my headspace. I was like everyone else. I thought it was a scam. It didn't make any sense. And by the way, to all your audience, I did not do that. And he's way bigger than me, and he would laugh and he'd sit on me and tickle me. But I was there. Like Michael Saylor talks about it, how he thought it was garbage as well. And so I was there. And then I was curious. And so I had just finished reading Jeff's book, The Price of Tomorrow. Read the Bitcoin Standard, then the Truth Machine, Sovereign Individual, Layered Money, When Money Dies, a whole list of books. Went to a couple of Bitcoin conferences, had more conversations with Jeff, and then it became pretty clear. Yeah, we're going down this deep, dark rabbit hole where there aren't a lot of outs. Like I started looking at real estate prices in Vancouver, and I had heard a stat somewhere that real estate hasn't actually gone up since 1930 in the city of Vancouver. And that kind of sounds ridiculous, right? But when priced in gold, it actually hasn't gone up. So I actually updated some stats, and right now, like if you go back like from 1995 to 2022, so the last 27 years, when we started, the average house price in Vancouver was 500 grand, and now it's 2.43 million, or it's up 381%. If you priced it in gold, which isn't as good as Bitcoin, in 1995, it cost 958 ounces of gold to buy a house in Vancouver. And at the end of 2022, it was 957 ounces of gold.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, I know that's a lot of meandering, and some people will say, well, you're cherry picking a number. If you actually pick any range, the variability might be 10 or 15%. It's not 300, it's not 400%, which it is in fiat. And so obviously there's something going on here. And then when you learn more about Bitcoin, you realize, wait a sec, it's decentralized. No person, company, or country controls it. It really doesn't care what other people do. It can't be manipulated, and it's finite. It's like literally, I think it's the greatest invention ever in human history.
Well, I would agree with you there. And it's so crazy to think about how much home prices have just exploded here in the US as well compared to what people are earning, right? Because if we were all earning enough, hey, no big deal. It's not how much money, but it's what it can actually buy you. And unfortunately, I mean, the two have just gone completely apart. What it costs is completely different from what we can actually pay for it. And that's so sad for the younger generations.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this decision to potentially make Vancouver a Bitcoin city. Why is it so risky? I'm assuming it has something to do with the fact that Canada has been well known to push back against things like Bitcoin.
Well, it's actually funny in the sense that Vancouver and Canada have been world leaders in Bitcoin. So when you look at ETFs, the first Bitcoin machine was evidently or ATM was in Vancouver, and so we actually have this ecosystem. So we can compartmentalize that, like we can take the business side of things. Of your question, I think the reason, and by the way, the motion we're filing doesn't necessarily say put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. It talks about exploring how we can incorporate Bitcoin into the city of Vancouver. But as we all know, it could be a great idea. So I'll just leave it at that. Once again, when you think of, because I've watched your podcasts and as well as, and yes, young people are disproportionately getting hosed or in this because their salaries have not kept up with the rate of debasement of currency. But I think every single person should be concerned about this issue. Like I look at the city of Vancouver, and we're a fiscally responsible administration, and so we're working hard to get rid of inefficiencies and make it more affordable to live here. And I've come to the conclusion, while we can do a lot, if the rate of debasement, the true rate of debasement is, let's say 15 to 20% a year, when you take the real rate of inflation, the fact that we live in a deflationary environment, so you have to add that other 5% onto the 10 to 15% that the governments are printing every year, we're not going to be able to keep up. And when we can't keep up, we will not be able to afford to provide the services we do, like policing and firefighting and issuing permits and sanitation. And so then our city doesn't succeed. And then the businesses don't succeed here. And then people won't be able to live here, and it's game over. Yeah. And so I think we have this awesome opportunity to change that narrative and put ourselves on a very solid financial footing where, if done right, we could set up our city, the city that I personally love more than anything else, for the next 100 years. And it won't be about our administration. Who cares about that? It will actually be about the future of our city. Now, and I'm planning to live here, and I don't want to be in politics. I don't want someone else to run this stuff. So let's set them up to win.
So it sounds like you disagree with your prime minister, who says the budget can just balance itself.
I'm not going to walk into that one, Natalie. So I have a fiduciary responsibility to work with anyone who is in the prime minister's office and the premier's office here. And so, look, we're not picking fights. What I can tell you, the rate of debasement has happened everywhere. Like, you just go into the Bitcoin standard and you look at that chart since 1971. Like, I'm not talking about Argentina or Turkey or the DRC. You talk about the US, you talk about the Japanese yen, you talk about the pound. Everything's off, whatever, 85 to 95% since 71.
Well, I can appreciate that. So tell me something, because the headlines that came out, maybe they were a little misleading. They said that potentially Vancouver might have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Tell me about exactly what you're looking at. What are the challenges and what might be possible, let's say, in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I want to be respectful and very careful about what I say, because there's a process that we have to follow. And so we are looking to explore making Vancouver a Bitcoin-friendly city. What that entails is we're going to ask our team at the City of Vancouver to explore how we can incorporate Bitcoin into the city. And so we'll leave it. And they're great. They're awesome. And we know they're going to come up with great ideas. And so now I'm going to take off my mayor's hat and I'm going to talk, from, my own personal thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, if you believe that Bitcoin is, the greatest invention ever, and it's something that can't be manipulated, and it's a true ledger of account, um, and you have a choice between, taking on currencies that are getting depreciated at 10 to 20% per year,
Mm-hmm.
and you have something that is actually increasing in value. And it looks like I'm not qualified to give investment advice, but when you look at if you go back to first principles and it can't be manipulated and you're not going to increase it and or the supply, um, it just makes sense for anyone who believes in that to make that a bigger part of their portfolio. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll leave it at that. I can't comment about a process that hasn't played itself out yet.
Got it. Do you think that the US will get a US strategic Bitcoin reserve based on some of the campaign promises that were made? And would that impact things up there with you, our neighbor, Canada?
I think, and regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, when you have BlackRock, when you have Fidelity, when you have ARC, when you have other sovereign nations, you have El Salvador, you have Bhutan, and then the U.S. You have what 200,000 Bitcoin there. Now you're not going to sell it, and you're actually looking at adding another 800,000 over the next 5 years. All these things help change the conversation from, you know, this is, this isn't even real. This is a scam. It doesn't make any sense to wait a sec. There's something here. And I think that's healthy. And once that narrative starts to, take shape, it feels like the flywheel is starting to, spin ever so quickly. So I think it's great. That's the other reason why we brought the motion forward now. It's actually something that I've been thinking about for a long time, but I don't think we were ready yet, and we didn't have the political capital to even have this conversation. It's still early, because we're still early in the game here, so the conversation is going to be hard. Um, but it's such an important conversation to have. And, I pride ourselves on, look, we're doing politics differently. And we're not worried about re-election per se. We just want to do what's right. And we don't care who gets credit for it. We just want to fix this place. And so if we can do that, it's a cause that's incredibly worthwhile. And it's worth getting, punched in the gut for it a few times.
For sure. And I'm a big believer that small changes make huge differences, and to really start with whatever you can in your community with one person, everything ripples out and has a greater impact and a greater effect. We all have voices that we need to use. So I want to ask you, a lot of the people that I talk to, if I'm thinking of the Bitcoin X or Twitter ecosystem, everyone's orange pilled, they've heard the same thing 20 times. When I venture outside to the people who aren't so into Bitcoin, there is still a lot of just skepticism, criticism, nervousness. How do you break through those barriers, and how do you get across to people that this is really something that they need to pay attention to and get off zero and start to allocate at least a small portion of their savings or portfolio?
It's challenging. It really is. But, we have literally, a supply of the Bitcoin standard in our office. And when money dies in our office and the price of tomorrow in our office, all the conversations that when people come in, they quickly go to Bitcoin. Sometimes it's kind of irritating for the people that come in. And, look, we just shower them with love and then we hit them with facts. So, when people say, well, it's terrible for the environment, it's like, well, actually, it's not. If you can guarantee a client for renewable energy, be it solar or wind, these projects get built that would not otherwise get built. Or you can, the natural gas that gets flared off, if we repurpose that, it actually helps the environment. Same thing with methane. So this is actually good for the environment. When people talk about, well, criminals use it. Well, it's like, well, they use U.S. dollars right now. And as an auditor, like I used to be an auditor, we used to go, well, that person driving the Ferrari who says he works at Dunkin' Donuts, right? And we pull up his tax return and he get paid 18 grand a year. It's like, well, prove it, right? But it's hard. Whereas with Bitcoin, in the blockchain, it's an immutable record. Every single transaction since the history of time has been recorded. As an auditor now, I'd go like, oh, you know what? I just see things going out of your bank account and it went into Bitcoin. Can you show it to me? Actually, you know what? You don't even have to do that. I can find it myself. And so you catch them on the on and off ramp. So I think Elizabeth Warren's the only person who still believes that that's the case, right? So, oh, sorry, I got political there. I didn't mean that. I just, whatever. All right. So I'll be quiet there for a sec. But, look, the narrative out there is completely opposite of the reality. And I personally want people to wake up to it. And this is not a political thing. It's when people wake up to it, they actually see what's going on, and then they can actually plan their futures, and it gives people hope.
This episode is brought to you by Casa. As some of you know, I recently updated my self-custody, and Casa makes self-custody so easy even if you've never held your own keys or used multisig before. Casa has a state-of-the-art app and live experts standing by to guide you every step of the way. For those with large Bitcoin holdings, Casa just rolled out a new service. It now offers a holistic security advisory service. As a private client, you'll get a 7-step security overhaul, personalized consulting, and your own private emergency line for expert help when you need it most. Get 10% off your Casa plan at casa.io/Natalie. Next up, Speed, the fastest growing Lightning wallet in the world. Send and receive Bitcoin, swap with stable coins, and even snag gift cards to earn rewards, all in seconds. Download Speed via the QR code or the link in my show notes and use code CoinStories10 for 5,000 free sats. And finally, are you ready to take control of your wealth? The Bitcoin Way is here to empower you. Learn how to take full self-custody and eliminate all counterparty risk. Set up a node and become the master of your own transactions and enjoy true autonomy. And upgrade your cybersecurity and protect your online privacy like I did. The Bitcoin Way specializes in personalized one-on-one training to help you become fully self-sovereign. Schedule a free consultation today. All right, back to the show. Very true. I want to ask you, what do you think is the appropriate relationship between Bitcoin and the government? Because arguably, the government will want to come in, tax as much as possible, monitor, surveil. What do you think that relationship and role should be?
Yeah, the government's going to tax anyways. That's inevitable. But it would be good if they could actually change. And I know the laws are similar down in the U.S., but right now, every time you transact in Bitcoin, it's a taxable event, right? And so it doesn't make any sense. So if they concede on that, and we use Bitcoin as currency, I think we could be, and this is the hopeful part of me speaking. I do think we can get to a point where we're not going down the doom loop of worthless fiat currency, which means we can actually we won't have to tax as much to try to get us out of a hole. But that's a longer term thing.
It's so crazy to think that today, with Bitcoin's price almost at 100,000 US here, I think it's already broken past 100,000 Canadian, right?
Oh, it feels like it's about 7 trillion Canadian right now with the exchange. Yeah, no, it's what is it? Probably like 136, 137,000. But it's funny because I'm trying to get my headspace towards where Jeff is, not even looking at what
no price. Yeah,
no price. So
I know he's the Zen master. He's already in the future. We're here in the present looking to him.
no.
But it's crazy to think, I mean, a company, or let's say Vancouver did adopt Bitcoin and wanted to add it as a strategic reserve asset. You need to come up with a lot of money to buy just a few Bitcoin. It's and it's going to get even more aggressive.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point. And that's why we felt the need to come out with this now. From a political perspective, it would be a lot easier coming out a year from now. And up until the election down in the States, we had that opportunity. But you look at it now, the big overhangs in the market are gone. Like Germany's pretty much gone. FTX is pretty much gone. Um, Most of the people that own it now, once you take the traders out, everyone else is going to hold on to the Bitcoin forever. And then you have, Michael's or micro strategies. They're always good. Like if it dropped to 20 grand, they'd be raising trillions of dollars and buying everything up. You have the U.S. government potentially backstopping this one. Pennsylvania just came in. You have Bhutan. You have El Salvador. You have three countries from the BRIC nations. They're front running the U.S. government. All the ETFs. I forget the number. 15 of the 20 fastest ETF or growing ETFs were all based on Bitcoin. So there's been a quantum leap. This thing has been de-risked. I believe, not giving investment advice, but I believe this thing has really been de-risked. And now, if we wait a year, is it too late? Absolutely not. I still think we still have a lot of runway. But if you're looking at, if you think, I'll give you an illustrative example. If you think Bitcoin's going to 10 million bucks over 20 years, do you want to buy it at 100 grand or a million?
Exactly. Right. And
So
the cities and the nation states that do adopt it earlier, they stand to benefit. Like I can only imagine how El Salvador will be doing in 10 years because of the decisions that President Bukele made. Before we start to wrap up, I want to circle back on the affordability crisis that you mentioned earlier, because again, so many people are feeling that, and maybe someone's watching or listening to this and they really don't understand how we got to that problem. Here in the US, we're always talking about the Fed and the money printer. Can you maybe explain, especially for people that live in Vancouver or in Canada, is it similar? Is it because the government is spending so much money that the Canadian dollar has been devalued, and that's why the cost of real estate has soared, in addition to, I'm sure, probably supply challenges and all that? But can you kind of break down the problem and how we got here so that maybe people can start to say, oh, is Bitcoin a solution?
yeah, look, it's not super simple, right? And so let's own a couple of things. So Vancouver is actually a really desirable city. People want to live here,
It's
and we're
beautiful.
landlocked,
It's
right?
beautiful.
So we have the ocean to the west, we have mountains to the north, we have the U.S. border just to the south of us, and so you have a little sliver of what we call Vancouver. So it's always been a challenge. And secondly, so I can speak for the city of Vancouver itself. We have amazing people. Our people like that work at the city, they're great. They're super smart. They're passionate. They love this place. And we have some broken systems that they're working in, and we have to fix the systems. And some of those systems have resulted into incredibly long permitting delays to build projects, housing projects, which as we know as finance people, um, adds
Yep.
risk to the projects, and the carrying costs are crazy. And so that's been a challenge. And then you have the debasement of the currency. And so that's even if we solve all our challenges in Vancouver, if and we have to own that because we do have a responsibility. But if we don't fix the debasement problem, um,
Mhm.
a lot of that's going to be for naught. And so we're not going to be able to change what happens in Ottawa or Washington or Europe for that matter. But what we can do is control the
Yeah.
controllables. And at the city of Vancouver, exploring what Bitcoin could mean to our city is something we can control. And if done right, it can counter what's going on outside of the city that we don't control.
Right. It is so crazy to think though that you could buy a home today for the same amount essentially of gold as before, because that's at least preserved your wealth. Bitcoin's going to turbocharge your wealth, but in gold it's like the utility value of the home is so different than the price, and hopefully we can change some of that, because I know there are so many people out there, they've become renters for life because homes are
Yeah.
just too expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anything else you want to share with my audience? I want to, by the way, share that I loved visiting your city. I went there for a conference this past past January. It was
Yeah,
actually a precious metals conference, and
I,
they were not fans of Bitcoin.
yeah, well, you know, it's funny because I used to be a mining investment banker, and I'm sure I know most of the people that you're talking to. And it's
Okay.
funny because when you mentioned that on an earlier podcast of yours that I watched, and so I had a pretty good chuckle. You know, change is hard, and especially if you're in an industry where you've done really well, and the miners have done really well. But you know what? There were a lot of people that did really well making buggy whips before Ford came out with Model T. I'm sure
Uh-huh.
there are a lot of fax machine companies that were absolutely killing it
Yeah.
before computers came along and email. And so this is no different. We have something arguably one of the greatest inventions. I actually think it's the greatest invention ever in human history, but let's say it's the top five.
Hmm.
It's normal for people to be scared of it, and it's going to happen. And so we're just on the front end of it, and it's going to be a great ride. I
Yeah.
actually have hope for not just the residents of Vancouver, but I have hope for the world. This is actually going to help us solve environmental challenges.
Hmm.
We're going to basically give sovereignty to people, control of their lives, and people are going to be able to live in homes. They're going to be able to do that. So, how isn't that cool?
I'm there with you. I'm already orange pilled, so everything you're saying is music to my ears. But yeah, going back, it was the VRIC conference, and Mark Moss, Robert Kiyosaki, and I did our best, but we didn't reach a lot of people there. So we got a lot of people to orange pill. You're doing a great job. Where do you want to send people? Can anyone take action and help Vancouver become a Bitcoin city?
Yeah, wow. Well, this our motion's coming to City Council on December the 11th, I guess. Hit the City of Vancouver's website, and if you want to say a few words at that council hearing in support, um, please sign up, and that would be absolutely great. I can send you a link, but
Absolutely.
basically, if you can help, if your viewers can help demystify this process and actually talk about why this is good for the environment, talk about why this is actually good, sound financial policy. One thing we didn't talk about, you know, um, let's say we were the recommendation is to look at putting it on the balance sheet. Um, it's the number one performing financial asset for the last 16 years on the planet. I actually think it's crazy that we can't, right now, we're not even looking at it.
Yeah.
There's something there.
It's a great point. I will absolutely put that link in. I hope all the Canadian Bitcoiners and certainly the ones in Vancouver come out, show their support. And Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the show. We can't wait to get an update.
Yeah. Hey, listen, thank you for everything you do to spread the message across the planet.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Make sure you're subscribed to the show and hit that notifications button so you never miss any new content. Also, check out our weekly free newsletter at thenewsblock.substack.com. This show is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing should constitute as investment advice, and you should always do your own research. I'm always open to feedback and guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out at info@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.